What we should be talking about right now is the fact that you have students whose civil rights have been violated. So these schools, which do not take campus security seriously, we should be invoking Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and we should be defunding these institutions if they're not going to protect the civil rights of students. It's that simple. And this goes back very clearly. If you go back to the civil rights era, the reason why Title VI was put into the Civil Rights Act is because you had black students whose civil rights were not being protected on college campuses. So if it was good enough then, it should be good enough now.
Well, Congressman, when we think more widely about what many of these protests have emanated from, obviously it is the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, where we have seen tens of thousands of Palestinian lives lost. There are questions now as to whether or not Israel will be moving forward with a further ground invasion into Rafah, potentially resulting in more loss of civilian life. Would you be supportive of any alteration to U.S. policy toward Israel if Israel were to do that when the administration has warned against doing so, conditioning aid, for example?
No, I don't think we should do that. This is something where Hamas committed a disgusting atrocity against the people of Israel on October 7th. And so what the United States government should do is stand behind its ally. If Hamas refuses to surrender, that is because Hamas is a terrorist organization that literally hides behind women and children in Gaza. They would prefer to see Palestinians die so that Hamas can live. I know that's very strong language for your network, but that's the truth of what's happening overseas. And so Hamas should have surrendered long ago. The only reason why they haven't surrendered to this point is because they are getting political coverage from a lot of news stations around the world and from the radical left in the Democrat Party, who continue to give them cover. When it comes to the Palestinians in Gaza who have died in this conflict, nobody wants to see the loss of life. But when you have Hamas hide behind women and children, using them as human shields, there is going to be loss of life. And they do that for one very important reason. Hamas hides behind women and children because they believe that Israel will weaken and not follow through with eliminating Hamas. But Israel's resolve is high. They should continue the incursion into Rafah as we speak. They should not stop from doing that, because if you let Hamas hide behind women and children and then rebuild themselves by sending aid over there, which, by the way, Hamas right now is stealing the aid for their own purposes from the Palestinian people. If you allow them to survive, you're only going to invite more attacks in the future. I think Israel's doing the right thing. They should proceed forward. And the White House, led unfortunately by Joe Biden and the Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, they should stand behind our ally, not behind Hamas.
Well, Congressman, do you not think the White House has done that to this point, considering we have not seen conditions put on aid, and we have heard many times expressed by Biden and other officials within the administration that the U.S. alliance with Israel is ironclad?
Listen, we've heard the words from the Biden administration, but when you go into where they've been talking with the Israeli government behind closed doors, what you've seen is them putting pressure on Israel, trying to get them to change the battle plans that the IDF is going through right now. They've been saber rattling to Israel, saying that there are certain conditions that the United States wants to see and how they proceed in this conflict. That is not the appropriate response from our government. That is a cowering response from our government, which is sad to see, because at the same time, you have the Biden administration is back channeling to the Iranian regime, trying to cut a new Iranian deal with that regime. And we all know that the Iranians are the backstop for Hamas. Hamas is a puppet regime of Iran. And so when you have Tony Blinken and President Biden going behind closed doors to back channel to the Iranians and then also to limit what Israel can do, then I would tell you no. The speeches might sound good, but what's happening in reality has not been good and not supportive of Israel.
Congressman, your displeasure with the way that this president has conducted himself in regard to this conflict is well noted. I would like to ask you, though, about the former president with whom I know you have a close relationship. I'm sure this will come as no surprise to you that your name has come up quite repeatedly in terms of who may potentially be Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate, join him on the ticket. come November. What conversations have you had, if not with him, with others on his team about that?
There's really not been any conversations. I think everybody's aware of kind of what the shortlist is, to use your language. But what we're focused on is making sure that the Trump campaign is in the best position possible to retake the White House this November. Look, whatever President Trump decides to do when it comes to the vice presidency, I'm going to fully support, because I just want to win and get our country back on track. We have an amazing country if our leadership is actually smart and gets out of the way of the American people. I think 4 years ago, the American people were lied to. Joe Biden said that the adults were going to be in the room and the adults are going to come back to Washington, D.C. But what we have seen in the last 3.5 years is the most disastrous policy, both domestically and on a foreign policy basis, our country has ever seen. Joe Biden is the master of disaster, and he needs to go. Whoever the vice president is, that'll be fine. President Trump's going to make that decision. I will support that. But we got to get our country back on track. The American people deserve no less, and our allies deserve no less.